Well, it was going all right until we spent too much time with the giant pill bugs. Classic Doctor Who review time. Getting it in the month just in time. This one was voted on by my supporters over on Patreon. Why not check that out? Go support me over there. At any monetized tier of support, you do get to vote on things like this. Also see the docket and get access to videos early. But anyway, since I've done that pitch up front, let's talk about Frontios. So this is the Fifth Doctor with Tegan and Turlough, which didn't bode well. I have a hard time finding stories I like in the Fifth Doctor's era for a multitude of reasons. Some of it has to do with the fact that some of them are just kind of cruel, and then some of them are just kind of crap, although that's true of literally every Doctor's era, so I won't dwell too much on that. But honestly, I've said for ages, I have a hard time connecting with the Fifth Doctor. And I think a big part of that is his connection does not feel nearly as strong towards his companions as I think would help. I mean, I've realized as I've gotten older and time's gone on, the nature of the Doctor's connection with the companions and how strong that is and how well I understand that does a lot to tie me into and ground me in the Doctor as a character, even as companions come and go. And I just don't really feel a strong connection between Davison's Doctor and really any of them. I mean, yeah, Tegan sticks around the longest, but boy, does she really not seem like she wants to be there. And honestly, with some of the stuff that goes on in this episode, pretty fair too. Turlough, okay. So I have yet to see the Black Guardian focus stories that introduce him and I know that's a major part of his character, and I haven't seen those yet. I actually am planning to get to those this year at some point, but Turlough has never worked for me. Even in audio adventures when I've heard Turlough, I'm like, something isn't working, and it's hard for me to nail down what. And I think the reason it's hard for me to nail down what is because without the story that's tied into why he's even there, I just feel like he's got no personality. Or at least nothing particularly interesting. There's kind of a streak of cowardice about him, which in theory, on paper, could be kind of interesting, except that's usually the Doctor's role, except the Doctor's not generally outwardly cowardly, just superficially cowardly, i.e. being willing to run away. Whereas Turlough has like moments of genuine cowardice, and that's not a problem for a character necessarily, but it does make him hard to relate to as somebody who's one of the co-leads in ostensively an adventure kind of show. It's just not a happy marriage. Out of the three, Tegan is the one who I like the best. But even she doesn't seem to have the best connection with Davison most of the time. So like this crew I was nervous going in. It's not too bad though. It's not amazing, but it's not too bad. I think at this point I might consider Kinda the Fifth Doctor story that I've reviewed that I like the most. Keep in mind, while I have seen Caves of Androzani, I haven't reviewed it. So I watched it like 15 years ago. And so I don't feel comfortable saying where that one lands for me. But I feel like of the stuff I've actually reviewed, Kinda probably landed the best for me for Fifth Doctors. This is on the upper end, though. Again, that doesn't make it amazing, but it does make it pretty solid. And it doesn't have as many of the stumbling points for the Fifth Doctor's era as sometimes occur. He is, at some points, a little bit of a dick, particularly to Tegan. There's this whole bit where he basically pretends to hand Tegan over to the villains. This is after we've seen a pretty gruesome and grotesque thing that the villainous aliens do to people. So like she's clearly very scared by this, and this wasn't like a plan that they laid out. The Doctor's improvising this, leaving her legitimately very worried. And yeah, like this is the kind of behavior, people talk about the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, being, oh, he's so much meaner. Like, not by much, not by that much, like a bit. He's more blunt about it. He's not as polite about it, But in terms of what Colin Baker does, not that much worse than the Fifth Doctor, to be honest. I think maybe that's part of my problem with the Fifth Doctor. There's a disconnect. And like, again, on paper, this is interesting, but for some reason it doesn't click for me. There's a disconnect between how pleasant he behaves and how cruel he can be at times. And it doesn't feel the way that it does with, like, say, the 10th Doctor, where like there's a darkness underneath it that he's trying to like keep a light face on. Ninth Doctor did that as well. It just feels more like he's gonna be kind of pleasant most of the time, whether he's being cruel or kind. And it doesn't quite work for me. I haven't really talked about the plot. The TARDIS gets just pulled down to this planet. They're not entirely sure why, and for a period of time, the TARDIS actually just kind of vanishes, stranding them there. I rather like there's a running visual element. I guess it counts as a visual gag where the hat stand that's been hanging out in the console room gets left behind, and Turlo ends up wielding it like it's a weapon. That's kind of cute. That's kind of fun. I kind of like that. So where they land, it's this colony of humans who have fled a doomed Earth. Boy, that's not a story that Doctor has recycled over and over and over again. That said, this is sort of, it's almost in some ways at its starting premise, kind of a initial run at what Utopia was from series 3, the one with Professor Yana in it, where, you know, the Doctor goes to the far end of time and a huge chunk of humanity is completely devolved. This isn't going that far, but it does. The Doctor is pointing out, like, this, we go no further than this. We go no farther forward than this. It is at the outer limits of his comfort, which kind of implies that, like, what happens in that series 3 episode is way beyond the line that he's drawing in this one. But it is kind of that same thing. Like, humans, they didn't have a home and they ended up here. And it's not a great situation. There are regular meteor showers, which the humans are convinced are an attack of some kind, but most of what they had that crashed in the ship doesn't work anymore. Their leader just died, and for reasons that I feel like go unaddressed, for plot convenience reasons, the recently deceased captain of this colony, of this ship, of these people, had left instructions that upon his death, like, all research gets shut down and we dismantle all this stuff that was theoretically going to bring us progress. And if there was a reason why he had that as a standing order, I missed it, because all that seemed to be happening was his second in command, or his enforcer, whatever we want to consider him to be. What was his name? Brazen? Something like that. Is just like, well, I have my orders and I'm shutting all this down. But it's like, literally everyone's like, why? That's a really bad idea. It's like, because of orders. Like, orders from a dead man. And I feel like there was never a justification for why that order was issued. Only that we're dealing with a guy who's going to follow it blindly. And like, that part I buy. That's not the issue. I was left wondering, where the hell did that order even come from? What was that? What was the point of that? I mean, like, narratively, it cuts them off from resources that the story still needs them to have access to, just not too early, because then the plot resolves too soon. That's why. But that becomes a little bit of one of those hand of the author moments where, like, well, we have to find a reason to have them, to have the Doctor and the companions, and really anybody, forbidden from using the resources that are readily available. So what's a contrived reason? Well, here's a contrived reason. Boy, does it feel contrived. So the captain's son is ostensibly in charge at this point. I actually thought for a little bit we were going to get kind of a vizier, evil vizier kind of thing with the military head, but like, no, he's pretty much just an orders follower and just an ass. Like, they try to give him a bit of a redemption at the end. I'm like, not sure I buy that. I mean, like, I'm not saying I wanted what happened to him to happen to him. Like I said, there's some gruesome imagery in this, which was another thing Fifth Doctor had a bit. Not only the Fifth Doctor, Sixth Doctor as well. They did some gruesome stuff around this time. They really did. But what is especially good in the front end of this is it does a real good job layering mysteries, because you have the fact that we don't even know why the TARDIS was brought down here. The Doctor didn't want it there. They were kind of forced down. We, like, in the cold open at the very start, we see, the death of this captain, and the body just disappears and we don't know why. And there's the meteors keep raining down way too frequently to just be a natural phenomenon, and we don't know why. And there's just this layering of mystery that kind of makes you go, ooh, okay. And it sets up a good thing to be peeling back the layers. Starting to get the answers that I don't want to say it falls apart, but it's not as strong, because I mentioned the pill bugs at the front end. So ultimately, we're dealing with this. I forget what they call them. It was something weird. Tractators, I don't know. It was weird. The Gris is their leader. I think it was the Gris. I don't know. I get names. I'm bad at them. But anyway, they look like oversized pill bugs. The faces especially don't look great. They don't move around very good. They have these little kind of arms. And like the more we see of them, the more it's like it's real hard to be intimidating. And like they have antennas that are just like have you seen those like novelty hats that it's like a bunny and the ears, and it's got little things that you can squeeze to make the ears go. Yeah, that's what their antennas look like. So it's, yeah, the more we see them, the less they function. And of course their leader talks, and it's just a flapping mouth, just open and close, and it doesn't look good. And there's also a very contrived thing where like their leader's the only one with like a high degree of intelligence, and if he's gone, the rest aren't a threat at all, which again feels very contrived. It feels a bit like another hand of the author thing, like just to simplify, like, well, how do we deal with this entire species? Well, let's just say we get rid of the leader and everything's fine. Okay. But all that having been said, the supporting cast is pretty strong. While I kind of railed on the military character, like he's well performed for what he is. And there's also a sort of a scientist who's very endearing. His daughter is kind of a Spitfire character. I liked her a bit. And actually, even the leader, the guy who's the son of the dead captain, he gets some layers. It's kind of interesting. It's layers and nuance that the ending doesn't really deal with, because how do I put this? It ends with we defeated the aliens and everything's fine now. We'll be going kind of thing. Except that, yes, the aliens were causing a big part of the problems, but this was still a group of people who were trying to control this colony with such an iron fist that they were literally shooting deserters, even as their numbers dwindled to the point that they were at risk of extinction. Just because the threat that was quite possibly, incredibly, a worse threat than them, like, I wouldn't leave these people in charge. I just wouldn't. And just leaving and acting like it's going to be okay. I mean, like, yeah, the military guy is dead. And I guess we're meant to presume the son of the captain is just going to be better, except we've seen him issue similar kind of kill orders. There's actually a really cute moment with him and the doctor where the doctor kind of tries to call his bluff and is like, look, if you're going to kill me, just kill me now. And the guy goes, oh, all right, then kill him. The doctor goes, oh, okay, I was not expecting you to do that. Like, it's funny, it's cute, but it kind of makes the point, like, yeah, he's young enough that he could change and improve, but also not in a great starting place. I wouldn't leave him in charge. But the show's gonna. Okay. But the other thing that's actually quite good, while I knock the aliens a little bit, like, again, they look okay. They're just shown too much. But there is actually pretty good production value on this. The sets especially. I feel like they must have gotten access to like a decent location or two, because there's a surprisingly large number of surprisingly good looking sets, convincing sets, whether it's the quarry or the laboratory or the tunnels, and like it's way more convincing than I'm used to Doctor Who looking at in this particular era. So solid. And like, it's also less generic. I mean, I say, quarry and this, and like, that sounds like, boy, that's generic as hell. Well, yeah, kind of, but they set dress it just enough to feel specific to this place and the people here. So it still kind of works. So yeah, some of the better production value on this than I've seen from 80s Doctor Who, because 80s Doctor Who could get rough. I'll still hold up the 7th Doctor's era because, yeah, it looked cheap, but at least they were willing to stick a lot more imagination into it. I don't know. I'll give you credit for something that doesn't look good because you didn't have the money, but at least it was a good idea, as opposed to something that is passable but generic because you didn't have the money. I don't know. I'm kind of tangenting. I guess because I don't have all that much to say about too much more of this. It's solid. It's a solid piece, which for my record with the 5th Doctor should probably be considered a hearty recommend. It's interesting. Like, I don't think I've heard of this one. Like, I would keep seeing the name and my eyes would kind of glaze off at oh, that's a slightly odd name. Okay. Again, though, I think part of it is I don't hear that much about too many of the 5th Doctor's episodes in general. Like, for better or worse. I think the only ones I can think that I ever hear people talk about are things like Resurrection of the Daleks, and Caves of Androzani, and Castrovalva. Whatever the heck the one that Omega is in, which I now can't even remember. So maybe I shouldn't count that one. Yeah. Earthshock. That's one people talk about and remember. So like some credit in there, but I feel like there's a lot of things that, because I can scan over, like look at the list of episodes for the different Doctors, and for all of them, there's going to be ones I'm kind of tell my hand like, I never even heard of that. But I feel like a higher percentage of the 5th Doctor stories fall under that category than the others. I don't know. That could just be my bias talking, given that the 5th Doctor has never really connected with me. But I'm clearly tangenting at this point, so maybe we should just wrap it up. Frontios, what did you think of this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. I pitched that earlier, so we don't have to go through all that. But even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe, those all help. You know the YouTube things. But don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Zubin Lotfula, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Alistair McPherson, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. If you'd like me to... I read the names fine, then screwed it up. If you would like to hear me try and say your name while these guys chitter in my ears, check out the rewards on my Patreon. Yeah, you're not distracting at all.